3 weeks ago, the European Union started charging a €3 customs duty on cheap packages coming in from outside the bloc. Every low-value parcel. €3. If you're sitting in America right now thinking, cool, European problem, not mine, you lost this one first. Last August, the United States killed the $800 de minimis exemption. Not just China, every country on Earth. Every package, every time, duties owed at the border. Within weeks, small parcels coming into this country dropped 54%, according to the Universal Postal Union. So follow the logic for a second. Free trade, open markets, let the consumer decide. That was the American brand for 40 years. And now, the most free market economy on Earth is inspecting your $14 phone case at the border like it's contraband. The easy explanation is that governments hate you and want you paying full retail at home. That's the version in the comments, and it's wrong. The real answer is that a Chinese company built a business model so good it made a century of trade law obsolete, and the West noticed about a decade late. Let's go back 30 years, because the setup matters. 1990s. China is not a rival. China is a contract manufacturer. Nike, Adidas, Zara, H&M, everybody produces there. A pair of sneakers gets assembled in Guangdong for a few bucks in labor and materials, and that same shoe sits in a mall in Ohio with a $120 tag on it. And here's the thing everyone glosses over. Nobody in Washington or Brussels was upset about this. Not even slightly. Because the value wasn't in the stitching, it was in the swoosh. Brand, patent, design, retail markup, all of that stayed in the West. China got the assembly line. We got the margin. And for about 20 years, that was a fantastic deal, if you were on our side of it. Now flip it. You're the factory owner. You make the object. Somebody else stamps a logo on it and takes 90% of the money. How long do you sit with that? So Chinese manufacturers ask the obvious question. Why don't we make the same shoe, skip the logo, and sell it for $8? If there's an $8 version of a $40 shoe, a lot of people take the $8 version. Not a complicated theory. There was just one problem, and it was a monster. Distribution. You're a mid-sized factory outside Shenzhen. How do you reach a customer in Cleveland? You can't open a store there. You can't call American retailers because in 1995, you don't have their number. You don't speak the language, and they've never heard of you. Sourcing from China meant the Canton Fair, letters of credit, container bookings, customs brokers, a Walmart-sized operation. So the factory stayed trapped. The Western brands were the only door out, and they set the price at that door. Then, in 1999, a former English teacher named Jack Ma looks at the internet and asks a better question. Massive production capacity over here, massive consumption capacity over there. Why can't I wire them together? That's Alibaba. And pay attention, because most people mash Alibaba and AliExpress together, and they are not the same thing at all. Alibaba was business to business. Wholesalers and retailers anywhere in the world open an account and buy from Chinese factories in bulk. Alibaba sat in the middle and solved the boring part, which was the hard part. Payment escrow so nobody gets robbed. Translation, dispute resolution. And it worked! A guy in Cleveland with $20,000 could suddenly source like a multinational. Now, why did nobody in Washington lose sleep over this? Run the money. That importer buys a pallet, commercial shipment, so it clears customs and pays duty. He rents a warehouse from an American landlord. He hires 2 people, so payroll taxes. He sells and collects sales tax. He profits and pays income tax. Count the winners. The importer, his employees, the landlord, the treasury, 4 separate times, and you buying it cheaper. The only loser is the domestic factory that can't match the price. And honestly, nobody in America was fighting to keep making plastic spatulas and shower curtain rings. Let someone else stamp out the trinkets while we build aircraft, chips, software, cars. Then in 2010, they asked the question again. Wait, We produce it. Some importer buys it for $2 and sells it for $15. Why is he in this picture at all? Cut him out. Sell straight to the person who's going to use the thing. That's AliExpress. Same founder, completely different animal. Business to consumer. Great in theory. Two problems in practice. Problem 1. It's 2010. Half the country doesn't have a smartphone. You're asking a normal person to buy something they can't touch from a site they've never heard of, shipped from 12 time zones away by a seller whose name is 9 random consonants. Good luck. But that one fixed itself. Give it a decade of iPhones and one-click checkout. Problem 2 was the real one. Customs. An importer deals with customs. That's his job. He's got a broker on retainer. A normal consumer will not. Nobody buying an $11 spatula files an entry summary. He wants a box at his door. And that is where they found the crack in the wall. Almost every country on Earth had a de minimis rule. Small package, low value, wave it through. Not out of generosity, out of arithmetic. Processing a $12 package costs the government more than the duty is worth. In the US, that ceiling got raised to $800 in 2016. In the EU, it was 150 euros. So the strategy writes itself. Under that ceiling, we can't ship you a refrigerator. Can't ship you a laptop. Fine. But every cheap, medium useful object in your house, charging cables, kitchen gadgets, phone cases, tools, kids' toys, all of that fits, all day long, straight to your door. No broker, no forms, no duty. And when your version is 3 to 5 times cheaper, everything under the ceiling turns out to be an enormous amount of stuff. So the loophole sat wide open from 2010 on. Why did it take 15 years to slam shut? 2 reasons. The first is Temu. The second is much bigger, and it's how this video ends. Temu launched in the US in September 2022, and it does not work like AliExpress at all. On AliExpress, a Chinese seller opens an account and does everything himself. Shoots his photos, writes his listing, sets his price, runs his ads, ships his package, handles his returns. Think eBay. You're dealing with a stranger. Temu walks into the same factory and says something completely different. You are terrible at all of that. Your photos look like a hostage video. Your title is 4 keywords of broken English, and when an American wants a refund, you will handle it badly. So don't. Just manufacture. Send me 400 or 500 units and go back to work. Temu takes those samples into its own warehouse. Temu's people shoot the photography, write the copy, set the price, run the marketing, hold the inventory, ship the order, process the return. The factory does the one job it's actually good at, making the thing. And if the product sells, Temu calls the factory back and says, produce 100,000 more. Look what that fixes at once. No random overseas seller, so the scam problem disappears. Professional listings, so the conversion problem disappears. One company handling returns, so the trust problem disappears. Then they bolt an algorithm onto it. Temu watches every tap from every user in every market. Which color moves, which thumbnail converts, which product hits in Texas and dies in Poland. That data doesn't go into a quarterly report. It goes back down the line as a production order. 100,000 more of the pink one. Kill the blue. That's a demand sensing machine wired straight into the largest factory floor on the planet. Nothing in Western retail is built like that. Then they bought attention like maniacs. Super Bowl 2023, 2 spots, roughly $14 million. 2024, 6 slots at about $7 million each, plus $15 million in giveaways. Total ad spend reportedly $1.7 billion in 2023, closer to $3 billion the year after. At one point, they were the second biggest advertiser on Facebook, behind Amazon. That's the whole list. Now the numbers that moved governments. In 2015, U.S. Customs processed 139 million de minimis shipments. In fiscal 2024, 1.36 billion, nearly tenfold in 9 years. Over 4 million packages a day, every one legally entitled to skip the duty. Europe is worse. 4.6 billion low-value parcels entered the EU in 2024, 12 million a day, double the year before, 91% from China. And this is the number that reframes it. Those low-value items are 97% of everything the EU imports by count. By value, about 2%. Average declared value per item, €8.82. So why on earth would a continent rebuild its customs code over €8 packages? Because it was never about the €8. It was about the asymmetry. Two businesses, side by side. Business 1, an American seller with the exact same phone case. He imports wholesale, so he pays the tariff. He pays a broker. He pays warehouse rent. He hires someone, so payroll taxes. He collects sales tax and income tax on the profit. All of it is baked into his price. Business 2, same phone case, shipped from Guangdong under the de minimis ceiling. No duty. No U.S. employees, no lease, no sales tax, no corporate income tax here because there's no here. Same product, same customer. One of them is carrying the cost of the country it sells into. The other is not. That's not a better company beating a worse one. That's a tax structure beating a tax structure. And you, staring at a $5 item in a store that costs 80 cents on your phone, seeing none of it. You just feel robbed by your own neighborhood. And look, I've done it. Drill bits. $22 at the hardware store, 4 on my phone. Same box, same photo. I did not agonize over it. Which, to be fair, you kind of are. Both things are true. The domestic price is inflated, and it's inflated because that seller funds roads, schools, and his own employees. The app in your pocket funds none of it. So the exemption died. May 2025 for China and Hong Kong, August 2025 for the entire world. Parcels under $800 dropped 54%. Temu lost roughly half its monthly American users between March and June. Shein lost about 12%. But people missed the second half. Temu didn't die. It adapted immediately in exactly the direction the policy was pushing. They pivoted to local sellers and local warehouses. Orders fulfilled from inside the country now make up the majority of their U.S. volume, on top of a network of around 13 self-owned facilities, roughly 10 of them in Europe. Think about what that means. When Temu holds inventory in New Jersey, it clears customs like any importer, pays duty, signs leases, hires staff, remits sales tax. The special advantage is gone. It becomes a normal, extremely well-run competitor, which was the entire point of the law. Europe's version, live since July 1st, works differently. €3 per item category, not per parcel. 5 identical shirts, €3. A shirt and a smartwatch, 6. It runs until 2028, with a separate handling fee expected on top later this year. Now, the part everyone leaves out. If low-value parcels are 2% of import value, no economy collapses over phone chargers. That's a rounding error. The trinkets were never the real story. What else China started making? That's the real story. Chinese EV exports hit a record 2.5 million vehicles in 2025, roughly double the year before. China accounts for about 3/4 of global EV production. BYD sold around 4.3 million electric vehicles in 2024, against Tesla's 1.8. CATL and BYD together control more than half the world's battery market. 8 of the 10 largest grid storage integrators are Chinese. And outside the United States, China is the only country with its own major social platforms, its own frontier AI labs, and its own Amazon-scale e-commerce companies. Go back to the original arrangement. They do the low-margin assembly. We keep the brands, the patents, the technology, the high-end. Then we sell them cars, phones, and computers with our logo on them. Every piece of that has flipped. They make the car. The phone, the battery in the car, the panel on the roof, the app on the screen, the model behind the app. And instead of buying ours, they sell theirs into our markets. Precisely that, is the moment free trade stopped being sacred and started being negotiable. Huawei got cut off from Google services and shut out of the network. TikTok came within an inch of a national ban. Chip export controls, tariff walls going up across the US and Europe at once. The same governments that spent 40 years calling protectionism a loser's game now ride it with both hands and call it national security. Funny how the rules of the market get reopened the second the market stops producing the correct winner. One last story, because history says this better than I can. 1839. Britain has a trade problem. It desperately wants Chinese tea, silk, and porcelain. And China wants nothing Britain makes. So silver drains east year after year, and London gets creative. It starts smuggling opium into China, illegally, at scale. It works catastrophically well. Addiction spreads to the population. The Qing government finally sends a commissioner named Lin Zexu to Canton, where he seizes more than 20,000 chests of opium and destroys them. 500 workers, 22 days, dumped into trenches with lime and salt and flushed out to sea. And Britain's response? Outrage. Destruction of private property. A violation of the principles of free trade. So, Britain went to war, won, and imposed the Treaty of Nanking. China paid compensation for the drugs it destroyed, opened 5 ports to British merchants, and handed over Hong Kong. The principle the Royal Navy went to war to defend was simple. A country does not get to close its market. 200 years later, the roles are reversed, and the product is far more wholesome. China isn't selling anyone opium. They're selling phone chargers, electric cars, and solar panels, things that make your life cheaper. And the same civilization that shelled a coastline in the name of open markets is now writing €3 duties and calling it fairness. I'm not telling you the tariffs are wrong. There's a real argument on the other side. A country that can't manufacture anything can't defend itself. A tax system only works if everyone selling into it pays into it. What I am telling you is that free trade was never a law of physics. It was a policy, written by whoever was winning, sold to everyone else as eternal truth, and quietly repriced the second the scoreboard changed. So the next time somebody hands you an economic principle like it's gravity, check who's holding the scale. If this is the kind of thing you want more of, subscribe. This is the stuff that somehow never makes it into the headline.